My name is Lizzie Lockwood, and I partner with prosecutors' offices in California and across the country to help set up their PIR units and also to work directly on case review and implementation for the people. So now that you have more context on what PIR is and how offices are implementing it on the ground, I just want to share a little bit about how we at For the People support our partner offices. So we strongly encourage our partner offices to designate specific staff to work on resentencing. This ensures that the policies and approach of the office are consistently carried forward, particularly in the beginning when the process is unfamiliar to the office, defense counsel, and the courts. Moreover, having a central team does ensure that there is a strong organizational knowledge base. Tammy and her team are a really excellent example of the value of doing it this way. So once an office's team has been designated, we will then provide in-depth training on various facets of the PIR process, and we'll also work to help them in identifying and building partnerships with the relevant stakeholders in their jurisdiction. This includes community organizations and state agencies such as the correctional system. These external stakeholders, including defense counsel, are really very vital to ensuring that PIR is carried out as seamlessly and successfully as possible. For example, community partners can be really pivotal in assisting with reentry planning, working with family members and support networks to obtain various support materials, and much more. Additionally, strong partnerships with the Department of Corrections and parole will really help make the logistics of the process move much more smoothly, including getting access to prison records and getting a better understanding of how a person is doing while incarcerated, including understanding facets of prison operations and opportunities, and then ensuring a smooth release following resentencing. For the People also assists our partner offices in analyzing their prison data to create what we call a data snapshot. Because data plays such an important role in this process, I'm going to take a quick detour here to walk you through a sample data snapshot that FTP generates for its partner offices. These snapshots are extremely helpful both in familiarizing prosecutors' offices with their county prison population and as a tool, as Tammy just discussed, for identifying potential eligibility criteria and cases for review based on factors such as age, offense, and time served. So using a county's prison data, we can identify what percentage of the county prison population has served 7 or more years, 10 or more years, and so forth. And to identify the county's elderly prison population, breaking it down into these categories you see here to identify those who we know typically pose a lesser risk to public safety upon release. Similarly, we can use the data to identify who among the prison population were juveniles or transitional youth at the time of their offense. With so many changes in the law limiting how and when juveniles and transitional youth offenders may be prosecuted, this is a population that a lot of offices want to look at for potential PIR. Especially where new laws that have been enacted are not retroactive. And we can also identify the percentage of a county's prison population that are serving sentences for different categories of offenses: sex offenses, homicides, property crimes, etc. Finally, our data scientist will use layering to pull from all of the aforementioned categories to identify a reasonably sized pool of potential candidates to engage. So, for example, An office wants to start by looking at non-sex, non-homicide, non-violent offenses, with the exception of residential burglary, which, at least in California, is a violent offense where the victim or someone is at home. And this produces a list of 309 people out of the county's total prison population of approximately 3,300. Depending on the office's resources, this is probably too large a number to start with. So then we layer on a time served requirement of 10 or more years. This then brings that number down to a more reasonable number of roughly 140 potential candidates. Perhaps that office still feels that number is too high, so we layer in age. For example, the office is particularly interested in looking at cases where the incarcerated person was a transitional youth at the time of their offense. Layering in that criterion, we then get down to a potential engagement group of 18 people. We can also similarly do that to poll the elderly population. So after we've done that data snapshot for an office, we will work with them to solidify and set criteria for the types of cases eligible for review. Please keep in mind, however, that this is just initial eligibility criteria. Just because a case falls into stated criteria does not mean that the person will be resentenced. It's just really a starting point. We also encourage and assist our partner offices in creating an external written policy explaining how they do this work. This ensures that the community has appropriate expectations and understands any limits on the scope of the work, such as the types of cases an office will or will not consider. Once a partner office identifies a list of potential candidates for review, For the People will commence our case review process. We send a packet to the persons identified, explaining the review process, requesting authorization for their prison records, and encouraging them to submit support materials and reentry plans. From there, we then conduct a careful and thorough review of each candidate's records, including details of the underlying offense and prior criminal history, the person's conduct while in prison, and their reentry planning and preparation. As Pooja mentioned at the beginning, For the People is a neutral technical assistance provider. We do not advocate for cases. Instead, we support prosecutors' offices by providing thorough review of this information so that they can use their discretion to decide which cases to approve. For the People is never directly involved in the victim notification process, but we do support our partners in an advisory role as needed. We are also in the process of creating a guide on best practices for victim outreach and notification. So Tammy, you can expect us to be reaching out to you. So once an office decides to proceed with resentencing, For the People will write the underlying motion or petition and pull exhibits for our partner offices to file in court. The only section of these motions that we don't draft is, of course, the section discussing victim outreach and contact. Lastly, and potentially most critically, the work of a resentencing effort continues after the actual resentencing. Reentry, as used here, involves the process of planning for life outside of incarceration, a life that is set up with safeguards for success, which we know from experience is a critical piece for prosecutors in evaluating a person's suitability for resentencing. Reentry can be a very complex, challenging process. So in our experience, defense counsel and community organizations are really, really crucial here. To that end, For the People collaborates with these stakeholders many of whom you can see on our slide here, as well as with the incarcerated person themselves, to build out a comprehensive wraparound reentry plan that takes into consideration all factors that contributed to the person's original criminal behavior. For example, where the person has a history of substance abuse, and that was a contributing factor to their underlying offense. We know that continued sobriety support is going to be essential, and that must be built into their reentry plan. For the People also has an in-house reentry coordinator who works with the incarcerated person to identify reentry needs and supports, and then also supports in the pre-release phase, and provides ongoing reentry support to them post-release. So lastly, I just want to highlight our clinic work. As Pooja mentioned, For the People has been leading a resentencing clinic at the University of Davis School of Law, and this is in partnership with the Yolo County District Attorney's Office. We've been doing this clinic since 2020. And over the course of the clinic, the students will work directly on real cases from start to finish, all the while gaining invaluable experience in oral argument and legal writing. At the beginning of the semester, the students are trained on the mechanics of the PIR law in California and how to review prison records. From there, they review case files and prison records, identify areas where maybe further supporting information might be needed, and collaborate with the public defender's office and relevant community-based organizations to request and obtain those support documents. And then they assist in developing these comprehensive wraparound reentry plans. At the end of the semester, they present these cases to elected prosecutors who ultimately decide whether their office will resentence the person.
5-minute warning.
Thank you. The clinic also gives the students a bird's eye view of the criminal justice system. Excuse me. Gives them a bird's eye view of the criminal justice system from the perspective of a prosecutor who is, as you all know, tasked with balancing the interests of justice alongside those of public safety. Through law school clinics that focus on doing PIR work, future attorneys are engaged and educated on the multifaceted role of prosecutors beyond influencing decisions on charging, bail, evidence, and plea bargains. And prosecutors get the benefit of helpful assistance from students who review and synthesize a lot of information that is all needed to make that final decision. But most of all, I think most uniquely, prosecutors have the opportunity to inspire and recruit a young, diverse talent pool to serve as the next generation of prosecutors. And For the People is working to bring similar partnerships to other law school clinics across the country. Lastly, if you are interested in any of what we've shared and want to learn more, we do have resources, including a national guide that provides a step-by-step guide on understanding PIR, enacting PIR laws, and then implementing them. We also have a monthly newsletter on our website, which you can visit for updates and more information.